I'm going to turn the mic over now to our membership VP, Mark, so we can welcome some new members and recognize some anniversaries.
Thanks, Amy. I have some notes somewhere. Although when I look at these notes, I think there's got to be some kind of misprint. We want to recognize someone here today who has been really part of the lifeblood of this organization for now 20 years. That's 2 decades. Someone who simply can't have been here that many years. Wow. But here he is. Let me introduce, again, James Phelps, eternally youthful, eminently wise. Thanks, James. There's your pen.
All right, thank you.
You're going to run out of lapels. I'd also love to recognize, introduce, have you stand, please, new members. We are a membership organization. As we grow, we're able to do more great work here in the community, enhance the profession, and it's been a delight to work here. My first year back in Portland after a few years in this membership capacity, and thanks to all of you who've signed up, who've come on board this year. Patricia Brooke, I'm sorry, from OMSI, raise your hand. Rachel Corderoli, back there with Crooker Consulting. Jackie Forsyth. Jackie, are you here? Jackie Forsyth, March of Dimes. Calliope Glaros. Ask Calliope about her new endeavor, Philanthropy Without Borders. It's super cool. A little plug there. Jerry Shoemate with Lifeline Connection. Jerry, welcome. Mallory Vandervoort from Lewis and Clark. Mallory, did you make it? Well, thanks to everybody. We appreciate it very much.
And we have a special acknowledgement. We have a member here who's been with the chapter for over 25 years, and although it's not yet the 30-year, Carol Vanata, we would like to acknowledge and thank you. Where are you, Carol? I saw you earlier. There you are. How many years with AFP, do you know?
A long time.
Well, Carol has been past president twice, or she served a two-year term. She's just been an incredible leader. Peace Health Medical Foundation has also been a phenomenal supporter, and when she was with OSU Foundation also. So Carol's just brought a tremendous amount to our community in AFP, so we want to especially acknowledge her today.
Thank you so much, Amy, and thank you to all you folks for supporting AFP. It's really important that we support our professional organization, so thank you.
Thank you. Next up is our vote for our 2019 board, and I can't believe we're already at that point in the year, but I'm going to read off the names of the slate for 2019, and hopefully you all had a chance to review that. We've been sending it out. We had a 30-day advance of this meeting requirement, so hopefully you've all had plenty of time to look at it. But I'll read off the names, and then if there's any comment or concerns or questions, you can share those publicly, because this is our official vote, and then we will take a vote and hopefully approve the new board. For president, we have Cynthia Thompson, Catherine Ingvaldson for president-elect, myself as past president, Sherry Scales as treasurer, Meg Marshall, secretary, Vivian Cheadle Manning, VP of marketing, Mark Parker, VP of Membership. Patricia Brooke and Jerry Alcock, again, co-VPs of Professional Development. Elizabeth Brooke Wilbanks, our VP of Philanthropy Awards. Calliope Glaros, our Diversity Chair. Annalise Briggs for Education Chair. Chris Anderson for Scholarship Chair. Carol Zanker as a member at large, and we have a couple of additions, or one addition and one change to note. We had Stephen Brand with Mission Matters as our technology chair. Turns out he has left the organization, but Josh Aranda with the firm has offered to step in, so I just wanted to share that as an amendment. And we also have Laurel Numbers, who is agreed to be a member at large, and she's with us. So those are 2 changes to the slate from what we put out in the notice. So before we take an official vote, any comments, questions, anything from anybody? I agree. Anyone else? All right. We've got a motion to approve. Anyone second? All in favor? Any opposed? Awesome. Well, we have a new board, and I now get to turn this over to Cynthia, our new president. And I have to say, just a couple quick words about Cynthia. Very strategically selected to be our president-elect. She, if anyone hasn't had a chance to work with Cynthia, she is just like one of those dream volunteers. And I think you all know we're all volunteers, and that's why having such a strong team is so critical. And this year's has been phenomenal. But Cynthia has like already this month just kind of come up with this great burst of wind to sort of lift the sails and carry us forward. And I'm really excited to serve on her board in the year ahead.
Goodness. Thank you. Thanks, Amy. Can everybody hear me okay? Thank you. Wow. I'm just very excited to serve as your president for our local AFP chapter. I can't believe I'm following in the footsteps of so many respected and accomplished fundraising professionals. I'm not going to be your charismatic public speaker, but what I'm really hoping to do is really engage our chapter and bring more value working with the committee members and the board members. I feel we're so dedicated to this profession, and I just want to help all of you, help all of our organizations make an impact and accomplish our own missions. And in this crazy world that we live in, we bring a lot of goodness to the community. So I'm just excited about that. And yes, I have been in training this past year as president-elect under the outstanding leadership of President Amy Brown. And you're an outstanding professional fundraiser. You're a dedicated leader. You are a friend to so many people. I just can't. I'm just following in your footsteps. I can only hope to make half a contribution that you have. So what I would like, we have a little gift, to give you, and if we could all give a round of applause to Amy Brown. Thank you. And it's a small little plaque because we're getting feedback that the larger big awards that we give out at the philanthropy awards, just as a heads up, that might be getting smaller things, artwork. Everybody has a lot of statues and frames, so hopefully that's perfect for you. So thank you. Thank you very much. I just have a couple other comments that I'm on tap to do here. I am here to officially give out name badges to our new board members. Calliope, could you come up and take your new name badge or hand that to her? That'd be great. Thank you. And did Chris make it? Chris Anderson? Chris, great. Thank you. The other two aren't here right at the moment. But just to give a few words about the year ahead, I wanted to point out that the national organization, they have, as Amy mentioned, launched the new website November 5th, and there were some glitches, but they're really upping their game on providing value to members and do a lot of strategic planning themselves. We hope to get the new AFP CEO out here next year. Hopefully he'll come and speak to us. But they're really all about bringing more value to members, both locally and nationally. I'm really interested in more networking. You'll hear more about our schedule change and then more volunteer opportunities for members. So I'm going to close by reading off some open positions that we have. We are still looking for some committee support for the professional development committee and programs. We have some philanthropy awards roles, digital communication specialist, volunteer coordinator roles, and support with membership. So if anybody, and Lisa over there in the back has a sign-up sheet. So if you're interested, we'll be blasting more opportunities out there, but that's what I'm looking forward to, engaging with all of you. And right now, my last duty today is to turn it over to Patricia, who's going to announce today's speakers. Thank you. And thank you for nominating us.
Thank you all very much for coming today. Very busy season, and I'm especially excited about our panel who can come up whenever they're ready. I want to tip, we're working, this is our second or third time we've worked with remote access, which we're excited to be able to bring so that we can reach our members who are across the state. But to remember, we should speak into the top of the microphone so that we can project across the room and they can pick us up for that remote access. Why don't you tell us, Jerry? Sponsored by Rose City Philanthropy. Thank you to them. So, after Thanksgiving, Americans turned their attention to Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, and Cyber Monday, and then we all know about Giving Tuesday. I think I had more asks in my inbox for Giving Tuesday than I did for Black Friday this year. So this is a big, important time of the year for all of us, and we were curious how donors make their decisions about giving. And for the majority of Americans, faith still plays a significant role in where we direct our giving. It's estimated that a third of all charitable dollars given in the United States goes to religion, and research shows that faith inspires even larger total, almost half of individuals' givings to specific causes. 3 of the top charities in the country by total revenue last year were the Catholic Charities, Salvation Army, and National Christian Foundation, are explicitly religious foundations, and religious agencies make up the top charities in the U.S., some of. And all of the Abrahamic traditions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, include some expectation of giving in their faith. But few people talk about it. Money and religion remain the taboo topics. Didn't bring them up for Thanksgiving, and we're probably not supposed to bring them up at other holiday gatherings this season. But today, we have 3 panelists who are not going to flinch from the conversations. So they will help us think through the fuller philanthropic impact of religious communities, something that goes beyond finances to look at the when, why, and how religious institutions engage their communities in giving, and also volunteering, advocacy, and cultivating a civil society. So if I could introduce our 3 panelists today and start with Susan. I had the articles out. No, Gail Mandel, pardon me, my order is off, is the Director of Philanthropy for the Oregon Jewish Community Foundation. Her primary responsibilities at the foundation include working with prospective donors to help them fulfill their philanthropic goals with both current and legacy giving, and directing the Life and Legacy Initiative, which OJCF is spearheading in Oregon in partnership with the Harold Greenspoon Foundation. Gail is also active in the community and serves on the board of the Middleman Jewish Community Center and the Portland Jewish Academy. Next to Gail is Susan Gallagher. And Susan is the planned giving manager at Mount Angel Abbey and Seminary since 2017. Her professional life has been spent at primarily Catholic institutions. This includes serving as executive director of the Providence Benedictine Nursing Center Foundation, development director at St. John the Baptist Catholic Church, and member and past president of the St. Ignatius School Endowment Board, and as chair of the Finance Council of the St. Patrick Catholic Church in Canby. Thank you for all that service. And then finally, we're pleased to welcome Dr. Wajid Saeed, who is co-founder and president of the Muslim Education Trust. Since coming from Yemen to the U.S. in 1988, Mr. Saeed has worked with the Muslim community as well as the larger community to promote a better understanding of Islam. He has been involved in numerous interfaith committees and panels throughout the years. He's one of the founders of the Interfaith Council of Greater Portland, an organization which came together as a result of 9/11. Mr. Saeed has spoken at countless colleges, high school organizations, and churches, promoting a better understanding of Islam and Muslims. He currently serves as the president of the Muslim Education Trust, which he co-founded in '93. So for today's program, I will ask each of them to address a broad question, and then I have individual questions for each speaker. But please don't hesitate to ask questions as they arise for you. Raise your hand and we'll get you the mic. So this can be a fruitful discussion and exchange for all of us. So welcome, panelists. Are we okay? Okay, thank you. So I thought it might be useful for us to start today asking you to share some of the underpinnings of your faith tradition in philanthropy and how you teach the idea of philanthropy to your faith community. Am I going first?
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. All right. It's great to be here today. So to answer this first question, I'd say in Judaism, there's 2 concepts that come to mind. The first is tzedakah, and the second is tikkun olam. tzedakah in modern times, people I think translate or think of it as meaning charity, but in reality, it's broader than that. It really truly means justice and righteousness. In Judaism, it's believed that we are required to give to help lift up those in need, to take care of both, all that are less fortunate, not necessarily just specifically Jews. The Babylonian Talmud actually states that tzedakah is equivalent to all the other commandments in the Torah combined. As far as like a mathematical calculation is concerned, as far as like tithing, or if there's a specific amount of one's annual income that should be given to tzedakah, I haven't found anything terribly specific. Some people might say 10%, but what I'd like to share is there's the great scholar Maimonides, who is also known as Rambam, and he created the ladder of tzedakah, and there are 8 levels of giving. The highest is when you enter into a business partnership with someone in need, or you provide them with a gift or a loan. And what you're trying to do, it's sort of like, instead of giving someone a fish, teach a man to fish. You're trying to break up the cycle of poverty. You are trying to help people without making them feel any embarrassment or shame for the position that they're in. As far as the teaching idea, I think as a Jew, I remember when I was young, the concept of tzedakah is that you might have a tzedakah box in your house. And if you got an allowance, you would always put a portion of your allowance into the tzedakah box that would go to charity, and then you could have the rest of the funds to use for yourself. The second concept is tikkun olam, which is repairing the world or fixing the world. I think, we all recognize that there's much to be done in the world to make it a better place. And we as citizens of that world, and Jews believe that it isn't up to just one individual to solve all the world's problems, but that everyone really needs to take a part in it. And whether that is through volunteering or making charitable contributions or, pursuing social justice for all. So that's...
Hi, I had an interesting time preparing for this discussion. I found that my faith community really didn't want to talk about the underpinnings of fundraising. And everyone I talked to said, Susan, just talk about the monks. People don't really know about monks. They'll find it interesting, and it's the idea of fundraising within the Catholic community is huge. So stay narrow, stay focused, and everyone will walk away with a better understanding of what Mount Angel Abbey is. So I'm the planned giving manager there. I've been there for about 2 years. So I'm going to tell you about the monks. So I realized that most people don't know much about Mount Angel Abbey, and B, they don't really recognize that the monks are a way that the Catholic Church has called people to express their faith, whether one would call it volunteering, building a more civic society, or such. The monks are men who have chosen to live in community, and that's what they're doing. So at a time when the world is filled with animus and outrage as a form of civil discourse, the Benedictine monks are an example of our faith in action. Monasteries, the Benedictines, have created a world apart, not to keep the rest of the world away or out, but to show what the world could be. So one of my most memorable experiences with the monks was the summer of 2017 with the eclipse. Family, friends, school, and alumni were invited to the Hilltop Monastery. Fields, farms, and mountains surround the hill as far as the eye can see. There was a crowd of about 500 people in a festive mood with lawn chairs, blankets, and the monks handing out juice and cookies. As the eclipse was at its pinnacle, it became quite dark. All became silent, and in Mount Angel farmland, it actually is silent. As the monks then began to sing Salve Regina, a Latin hymn of praise. It was a gorgeous moment as people soaked up a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It was very moving, but of course then we all had to drive back and get out of the traffic. But it is a wonderful place to live and work. The abbey was founded in 1882 by Benedictine monks from Switzerland in the tiny town of Mount Angel in the rural Mid-Willamette Valley. There are now 45 monks living there. They follow the ancient rhythms of work and prayer, guided by the rules of St. Benedict, who wrote them in 547. This remains their handbook even today, 1,500 years later. 6 times per day, you can witness monks in their long black robes hurrying to the church as the bells call them across the hilltop to prayer. The monks sing their prayers, and this is quite beautiful, and you're welcome to come. Their life is a focus on beauty, art, learning, and spirituality. It is a communal life, and they make a commitment of stability to live permanently at Mount Angel Monastery, follow the monastic tradition, and renounce all they own to become a member of this family, and obedience. The abbot, voted in for life by the other monks, manages the abbey. He is advised by a council of senior monks. They vote on proposals that affect them all. The abbot assigns work, and directs the life of all who work there. The current abbot is Abbot Jeremy Driscoll, who had, up until his election in 2016, worked 6 months of the year in Rome, teaching in a seminary and serving on committees as assigned by the Pope. Abbot Jeremy has chosen his theme to be Seek the Things That Are Above.
Thank you very much. What a beautiful story. First of all, I would like to thank Patricia and AFP for hosting such an important discussion. My name is Wajdi, and my last name is Saeed. My first name means love, and my last name is happy. So I look to this world always in a loving, happy lens. Philanthropy and charity in Islam is embodied in our way of thinking, in our way of engagement. The Quran, the words of God, to Muhammad through the Archangel Jibreel, like the Torah to Moses, and the Gospel to Jesus, peace be upon them all, emphasize, that you spend your charity, and the Quran specifically says, "Wanfiqu mimma tuhibbun," and give from what you love. Money is a concern of everybody, and everybody loves money. Nobody can deny that. So then we have to give from what we love, not from what we hate. So the Quran emphasized that. And then the Prophet, peace be upon him, Muhammad, when he heard this verse, he said, no one shall believe, no one shall have faith until they love their sisters and their brothers the way they love themselves. So when you give, you have to give something that is of a beautiful gift, and an engaging gift, and a caring gift that will impact you personally before it impacts the other person. So this concept of loving, what your brother and your sister or your humanity, and then the Prophet emphasized that, that the daughter and the son of Adam and Eve, all their work will stop except from 3 things. One is a great daughter and son that they can raise, and then a beneficial knowledge, a knowledge that you leave that will help and advance humanity and nature and all the creation. So weapons of mass destruction is not a beneficial knowledge. Anything that harm humanity and the environment is not a beneficial knowledge. Or medicine, that will help humanity. And the third, which is really a legacy that you leave behind, that will impact humanity. So in this tradition of the Prophet, peace be upon him, it never says that this gifts that you give has to be given to Muslims. So it is very important for us to remember that Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the Medinan society, the society that he built and created in modern day Arabia, he brought the Jewish community, the Arab Jewish speaking and the Christian Arab speaking, and then the new Muslims and the agnostic, the people that believed in God but they didn't identify. And he created what's called the Medinan society. The Medinan society was a society that built in philanthropy, social, emotional engagement, and critical thinking. This is why Muslims, scientists always were always in critical thinking mode, where they engaged with the Greek philosophies, the Indian philosophies, the Chinese. Remember the golden age, it was from around 711 to 1492. That's where Muslims have involved heavily in translating and also in adding, science and mathematics, alchemy, chemistry, music to the world, all the way from, Southeast Asia, South Asia, West Asia, and Africa, and the southern part of Europe, Al-Andalusia in Spain. So history was mentioned as the Dark Ages. It wasn't dark for the world of Islam, it was dark for Europe. That's period, and Muslim scientists and other historians, like the Jewish famous historian David Westerstein from Vanderbilt University, is still living scholar. He said if it was not Islam, Judaism wouldn't have survived Christian Europe. So this Muslim scientist have impacted Christian scientists, has impacted Jewish scientists, like my dear sister Gail mentioned the Maimonides. Musa bin Maymun, we call him in Arabic. He was an Arab-speaking Jewish scholar, lived in that golden age, and all of them heavily involved in this science. So it is very important that, for Muslims, when they give a gift, Islam allows us to give up to 33% of our wealth. And it is a must for us to leave money for our loved ones, our parents, our children, and the extended family. But you have the right, a lady or a man, they have the right to give up to 33% of their wealth in what's called a legacy, which means a continual charity. What today we call an endowment, what today we call, a trust. So when you see a chair in any university, it was a concept that Muslim scientists created in Al-Andalus, the southern part of Spain, the golden age of Spain, And it was that concept that people leave a legacy for scientific chairs, endowment fund in universities to enhance, When you see a water, a sabil, what we call the way in Arabic, it is water that you leave for the public use, not only for the public to drink, but also for animals and other people that are passing. When you see hotels, what we call caravans, passing in what's called the Silk Road trade, between East and West Asia, you'll see hotels that left as an endowment, for people that are wayfarer. People are passing and they have no place to live or stay, so they can stay that. So in today, Muslim speaking or Muslim world, you'll see these hotels and this endowment public funds still existing and still supporting such a thing that we call philanthropy. Philanthropy means the love of humanity, the love of man. So the Prophet, in his saying that no one shall believe until you love what is good for your brother and sister in humanity. Somebody came and asked a great scholar of Islam and four-guided Khalif, his name is Ali bin Abi Talib, the cousin of the Prophet, who is a human being when he heard this, to love somebody as you love yourself. He said, your brother and sister in faith or your equivalent in humanity. So social justice is a must, when it comes to philanthropy, that you live and you practice and you give from what you love, not what you hate. So it is very important, that. So how we practice it, my mother, God bless her soul, she came from a business family. I don't know my father, he died when I was 6 months pregnant. My mother was 6 months pregnant. So she taught me that, Wajdi, you have to give 33%. So I put in my what's called, my donation box. All my 33% is in that donation box. So, and my mother, every time she give a charity, she will bring us, her sons and daughters to touch this charity, to love this charity. And sometimes she put some perfume in this charity. She said, because it's given with love, it has to be received with love. So the person that receive it, accept it. So the Quran teaches us that whoever calls and asks you for a charity, you have to respond. حَقٌّ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. And whoever is deprived. There are people that are deprived in our society, but they don't, because of dignity, they don't ask for that help. So it is a must for us, those of us that involve in the charity committee, is to identify who are these people that don't ask for help. So we go to them, we deliver for them, rather than they come to us. You don't see in any Muslim religious sacred space any food banks, because it is humiliating for somebody to come and knock your door. So we identify those that are in need, or we publish, and then in a private, where the Quran tells us that your right hand doesn't know what your left hand is giving. So this is how we engage our youth. We engage them in so many ways, and I think there are some other questions that we can explain more.
Thank you all very much. This is already very illuminating to see, points of overlap and connection between the faith traditions that on the surface, or we're led to believe, can be so disparate. So anybody want to chime in or ask a question before we keep talking? Okay, wanted to give you a sec. So Dr. Saeed, if you could start us off. You've been active in the Portland community for 25 years now, and you have seen, I can imagine, so many changes. I wonder if you could speak and share an example of an effective faith and philanthropy partnership that you've participated in.
In our, I'm not a professional fundraiser, by the way, but I learned, how to engage, in philanthropy since I was a kid. So sometimes it has to be a natural instinct, but I would love to learn from each one of you. So in our community, in our Muslim community, we have what's called zakah. Zakah, Z-A-K-H. It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. So we give 2.5% from out of your net profit every year, that is given in 8 categories to the poor and the needy, to help, advance, institutions, and knowledge and other, necessary. So, and also we have what's called sadaqah. Hebrew and Arabic have common, vocabulary, and we have same alphabets because we are Semitic languages. So sadaqah and zakah. Zakah means to purify. To purify what? To purify your hearts and your minds. When you give, you purify yourself from the lust. You purify yourself from the greed, So this is where it is given in the 8 categories that defined, by the Quran, by divinely, ordination. And then zakah, the sadaqah, is the one that you have the right to give it in its way. Like in what happened in Thailand, the tsunami. So Mercy Corp, called, for help and support. So we have what's called the Youth Ambassadors Club, our youth leadership club. They respond for the fundraising drive. So they will collect the financial and the goods, and they will give it to Mercy Corp. Or the international medical team in Tiger, they will respond to that. The tsunami in Japan, recently our youth went, 80 years ago, what we called Flight for Friendship, to help the tsunami, to clean the debris, to give time. Money is the most important, but the most critical one is time. So when you give your time, you'll be able to give money. So you'll see our kids will volunteer, and our adults in the food bank, Oregon Food Bank. They will see them, when the Jewish cemetery was under attack 2 years ago. Muslim Unite, American Muslim United, to raise money to repair this cemetery. Last year, when the TriMet incident happened, we called, another charity act that Muslim Unite for Portland Heroes, the two gentlemen that got killed, in the TriMet, and then the young boy that got attacked. So we raise, money out of, love, out of respect, so we can heal and unify our public square. We want to bond with that, and that's what Islam is all about. In spite of all the negative media that you hear left and there, still Arab Christians still flourishing in Egypt, in Jordan, in Palestine, in Israel, in Syria, in Lebanon, Jewish, in Morocco, and in North Africa, in Yemen. So all of this, because Islam, engaged in a loving and caring way. The Portland Heroes, fund, we were looking only for $25,000 in 1 week just to help with the funeral, expenses of these families. We are not, obliged to do it, but it is morally and ethically that we, engage in that. So we raised about $630,000 in 1 week, and we made, an interfaith community committee, Jewish, Christian, Muslims, including, United Way and other non-faith-based organization to divide the money equally to these families. It is very important that we heal and unify our public square. And I don't know who mentioned that, these challenging times. Yes, it is challenging times, but it is a beautiful times. That's when we rise, to the challenge and engage and turn these challenges into opportunities and these weaknesses in our society into strengths. Humans has to give. Humans are beautiful creation of God, so therefore we have to respond, to negative with positive, with bad, in a goodness. So we'll be able to move forward and heal our beautiful world beyond the artificial boundaries that we have created. Remember 100 years ago, there were no boundaries. 100 years ago, there were no these funny boundaries that we created. There was no passports. People travel from Timbuktu, West Africa, all the way to China and trade, through what's called the Silk Road. People traveled and engaged in a loving and caring way. So we need also, positive thinking is an act of giving too. So we have to heal our public square and teach our kids so we can have a sustainable plan to protect this beautiful world that we claim.
So let me ask, some of what you spoke about is how you and your community works to inspire the next generation and the youth, and how you make sure that they learn and that they also participate in the giving and the volunteerism that's important in your faith community. Gail, can you talk a little bit about how you've used philanthropy and faith and combine those two to reach the next generation?
Certainly. So at the Oregon Jewish Community Foundation, we feel very fortunate that we have our youth foundation. So basically it engages teenagers, high school age students, freshmen through seniors, to participate in group philanthropy. They register for it's a years-long program. They learn about tzedakah. They learn about what it means to give with Jewish values. That doesn't necessarily mean that all the contributions that they end up making go to Jewish organizations. They go to secular organizations as well. But they come to learn and understand the fundamentals in Judaism and why it is so important to practice tzedakah. They visit nonprofits throughout the city, so they can see what the needs are in the community. And then we hold a fundraiser. They manage the fundraiser. They do the work. We raise significant amount of money, and then they grant out, last few years, about $50,000 a year to local Jewish and secular nonprofits. So they really kind of come to embrace the power of philanthropy, and that they can have a voice and they can help do their part to practice tikkun olam and prepare the world. In addition to our youth foundation, we also, just within the last few years, launched a young adult giving circle for Jewish individuals in their 20s, 30s, maybe even early 40s, to come together as a fully functioning collaborative giving circle. Each individual contributes $500 to be a part of the group, and the funds then are matched by OJCF's Community Endowment Fund, which is our unrestricted endowment fund. And they decide what areas of focus that they want to examine for that year. And they issue a RFP, grants are proposals are received by the foundation, and then these young adults all come together and discuss their values, where they are coming from, what they are bringing to this group, and they must agree upon where they want to grant those funds. So it provides a unique opportunity, I think, for people who come from all different realms of Judaism. Some people just identify as a cultural Jew. Some people might actually belong to a synagogue. We created this program because we really wanted to try to meet people where they were at. I think, as we can all agree, I mean, all of us who work for faith-based organizations, it's harder to engage the younger generations. There's a lot of concern. People are becoming less and less affiliated, be it Jews, I would think, Catholics, Christians, Muslims. It's definitely a challenge. So when we came up with this program, we really thought that we wanted it to have sort of a low threshold as far as how much religion it was gonna be involved. But we do focus on what it means to give with Jewish values. And then lastly, I'll just briefly touch upon. As Patricia said, I manage our Life and Legacy initiative here in Portland and in Oregon. As Wajdi said, it is very important. Jews believe in leaving a legacy, not necessarily just a monetary gift, but passing their values on from generation to generation. It's a concept called Lador Vador. And our legacy program, I think, has really sort of helped connect people who you might think are, actively revising their estate plans, who might be, in their 70s, 80s, maybe 90s, but we're really engaging people in their 30s and 40s to sort of consider what's important to them, where their values lie, and what kind of legacy they want to leave, and what they want to communicate to their children about what is important to them in their life, what they choose to support philanthropically, and how that ties into their Jewish values. And I'll just briefly mention, there's this story of Honi, probably mispronouncing that, so excuse me, but it's the story of, it's in the Talmud, and a rabbinic sage and a folk hero named Honi was living in the 1st century BCE. He saw a man planting a carob tree, and Honi asked the man, "How long will it take for this tree to bear fruit? Sort of, why are you, and the man answered 70 years. He said, "Why would you do that? You're not going to be alive in 70 years. Why would you go ahead and, plant this tree?" And he said, "My ancestors planted for me, and therefore, likewise, I'm planting for my children." So Judaism really does try to promote these connections from generation to generation, which is why we try to involve our teens so they can understand the importance of philanthropy and tzedakah and Judaism, carry it through to young adults, and then we work with elders, of course, with preparing their legacy and estate plans.
Thank you very much. That's really interesting. I'm sort of listening to both of you two right now. I wish that I worked for an environmental organization because I feel like I know what pitch I would need to make. It's really illuminating. So, Susan, both Gail and Wajdi have talked about how they reach and work with their community, but also reach outside of their community, their faith community, for their charitable support and sort of social improving the social good. So Mount Abbey on the outside seems like a very specific group, but it has worked recently. You've mentioned ways to attract a broader community thanks to its beer, but also thanks to its retreat center. So how, or do you at all work to reach the broader community through the monks' mission?
It's a really good question. One we really wrestled with, because when you become a monk and you dedicate yourself to a life at the monastery, you don't leave the monastery very often. And in fact, to leave the monastery, you have to have permission of the abbot. So the monks generally, as a rule, don't work outside of this community. And even when they talked about the brewery, they wrestled over that because it is very outreaching. It is a business. And did they want to get involved in a business that was worldly as opposed to their life of prayer? But that being said, Saint Benedict is the father of Western monasticism. His rule was and is used by many monasteries throughout the world. He is also the patron saint of Europe because the monasteries form the core of knowledge for the revival of European civilization after the fall of Rome. The Benedictines have always had a focus on beauty, style, and substance throughout the past 1,500 years. Monasteries have been centers for beauty, love of learning, training, and for spiritual growth. Mount Angel is no different, with 3 primary missions: the guest house and retreat center, the library, and the seminary. Additionally, with a nod to the arts, the monks host a 3-day Bach festival in July featuring stellar artists along with a fabulous buffet. Since 1889, the seminary has been training seminarians, that is, the future pastors of our parishes, from all over the West Coast and beyond. The seminary has an undergraduate 4-year college and both a 2-year and a 4-year master's program, as well as a doctoral program. There are 122 seminarians living in dorms and 169 students total. Why is the seminary important? Because it is training the future leaders of the church, both educating them and forming them. And this will impact Catholics, our neighbors, teachers, firemen, and their values for decades to come. Benedictine monks, through time, are renowned for their libraries and for being the keepers of knowledge during the Dark Ages, for protecting the light of Europe, and then rekindling this learning when the time was right. Mount Angel has a pretty large library for a monastery and seminary. It has 250,000 volumes and is open to monks, seminarians, and other students. It is also open to the public, which is unusual for a monastery. The library, built in 1970, is a beautiful and important building designed by renowned Finnish architect Alvar Aalto, known as the Finnish Frank Lloyd Wright. He has designed just 2 buildings in the U.S., and the library is considered the second most architecturally significant building after Timberline Lodge in Oregon. So we see a lot of visitors that are there just to see the building alone. The Benedictines have and continue a tradition of building structures to last and to be beautiful and to reflect how God works in us. We also operate a guest house and retreat center. The Abbey, if you visit the Abbey on retreat, it is an opportunity to confront the big questions of life. As a surprise to us, we have an increasing stream of guests to whom we have not been able to accommodate in recent years. It is a time when fewer people are attending church services, yet interestingly enough, we have more people seeking spiritual guidance. Therefore, we are in the middle of you would appreciate this, $17 million campaign to remodel and enlarge this mid-century modern building. So lastly, as Patricia mentioned, we have the brewery. It was begun as a means to increase income. The concept was presented to the monks because they vote on things, talk it over, and then vote with a number of other ventures. But brewing beer being one that can be traced back to our founding days, and since the Abbey has historically grown hops, it was a natural choice and a popular one to boot. The building itself is lovely and is built from trees grown on Abbey-owned timberland. The view from the brewery is of hop fields, and the beer, of course, is terrific. While the business has been great, there's been no talk of laying me off, so I'm pleased about that. So it is hard to, present in the same light that these two are doing how the Catholic Church is reaching out. But the monastery, while it doesn't go out and recruit or evangelize, it welcomes people to the monastery for that hour, that day, that retreat, or in case of a man who is called for his life.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for the reflections that you've provided us to think and to learn a little bit more about your faith communities. I have a summative question, but I don't want to take up all the time. If you all from the audience had any questions or feedback that you wanted to give.
I have a question. I'm curious about the Abbey. So you have folks that are coming to you. They're self-selecting to come for whatever reason, the brewery or the brewery or the library. So have you found that when folks, perhaps non-Catholics, the uninitiated as it might be, would show up and are then moved to the point where they say, this is something that's pretty special and I want to be part of that, and have so does that happen for you?
Do you mean part of it in terms of finding a calling or in terms of donating $100?
In terms of writing a check.
Some do. I think primarily our donors are Catholics. Primarily our donors are either very, very much moved by the seminary, seeing seminarians as the future of the church, and that's going to be Catholics. The other time that people will donate is when they come to the retreat house. St. Benedict professed a really profound concept back in the day of hospitality. And the monks see everyone and welcome everyone as Christ. So they see the goodness as you, not something you have to buy or earn. And so that hospitality, that kindness, that gentleness really engages people. And so, yes, we do see gifts from them. Not necessarily, I would say not a lot of people, because, we're Mount Angel. So we're out there kind of in the boonies.
Thank you very much.
I'll add a little to that because I've worked with the Benedictine sisters, and a number of their donors are, because they ran a small college for a number of years, are their alumni, because they see part of their mission and part of their work just living in the community. And so some of them see their ministry as their teaching. One of them even described, I was a hairdresser for a number of years and saw that as part of her ministry. So it's the people that they come in contact with as part of their work are the ones that were a lot of their donor base.
And our alumni, not when you come to the seminary to go to college, the intention is that you will become a priest. So our alumni are usually stay with the church.
Not always known for their wealth base, however.
Absolutely right.
Oh, yes. Hi, Arlene. Sorry.
Hi, remote people. Religion, as Patricia said, takes up 33% of most giving. But within each religion, there's so many different directions to go in. What's it like competing with the other programs within your religious opportunity?
Who was that question addressed to?
It's yeah. I mean, within Jews, I was actually looking at it's a study from 2013 from Jumpstart Labs, but that Jews typically give 62%. 62% of American Jews contribute their charitable dollars to Jewish organizations. That is a combination of synagogues, could be synagogue membership, and it could also be other Jewish organizations. So it's there. I mean, and then you're also just competing with secular organizations. So typically I think that at this point, and we've seen this with our teen programs and our young adult programs, is that generally speaking, giving usually falls around 60% Jewish to 40% secular. That's usually how things just sort of parse out. But it is difficult. I know, and at the foundation, we hold the custodial funds for all the major Jewish organizations in the Portland metro area and others around the state. And it's a challenge. I mean, people are really concerned about, building their endowments and funding those capital campaigns. So there's a lot of competition.
Can you pass it? So we had a challenge when we started our trust, in 25 years ago in 1993, the Muslim Education Trust. What we want to do and what we want to focus on. So we claim our narrative, how the Medinan society that the Prophet started. So what we call sacred space is not necessarily the traditional masjid or mosque that we see today. So the Prophet, in his early, engagement, with the early Muslims, the sacred space was a multi-purpose space. So it was, a place of worship, a place of community engagement, weddings, memorial services, and accepting friends, from other faiths to engage with. So what we call today the community center. So when we had the plan, to build our cultural and education center, we wanted to claim that narrative of 1400 years ago. And today, Muslims, whether they are in the east or the west, or north or south, today they will give, mostly in a very traditional way, because the last 600 years has been focused in that giving is the most accepted by God, is when you give, in this traditional way, building a mosque. So we had to claim and we had to educate our public that the mosque or the community center is not what we have defined in the last 600 years. It is the mosque that the Prophet, that the community center that the Prophet, that was a multi-purpose. So it was a challenging for us. It was a 10 million campaign. We finished it 3 years ago, but we raised $6 million in 2 years, So we had to do a lot of education to redefine and reclaim that narrative of 1400 years ago. In Portland context, yes, there might be doctors, there might be heart surgeons, there might be engineers, there might be teachers or homemakers. But at the end, people, they give in the way they have been raised inside their home. So for us to redefine and to reclaim that narrative, it became a great success for us, to what we called our campaign a smart giving campaign, reclaiming the narrative of the Medinan society. So today, the Muslim Educational Trust, when you see our building, it embodies, that Islamic sacredness. It embodies the Northwest design. It embodies also the beautiful Islamic architecture, where God is the center, not the human being. So we receive invitation from Boston, from Dallas, Texas, from Seattle area, from Chicago, to come and before they want to build their own cultural center, they exemplify what we have done here today. One of our great founders was the founding dean of the College of Urban Planning, Nuhat Tolan. Nuhat Tolan was a man ahead of his time. He defined the planning, for 40 years, 45 years here in Portland, Oregon. And he was a great, devout, spiritual Muslim, but he was also a great critical thinker and ahead of his time. Another great, architect is Nozad Othman. He owned what's called, at that time, OTAC. So we brought all the Muslim minds, both women and men, and they saved us 10% of that technical, charges, but also they contributed back, to the community, and that's, I think, where we need to be smart and intelligent, to claim back our narrative, whatever faith, whatever affiliation you do, in terms how we can give a smart giving. Remember, smart giving is a knowledge, great children that you raise, and more important is a legacy that you leave behind. So today we are at that stage that we are, thinking to do. Muslims has given in last year about $1.7 billion here in the United States only, the American Muslim community. So there is what's called the Lilly School of Philanthropy in Indiana University. So there is the program, the Islamic Philanthropy program. They have projected that. So we want to claim only 1% to 5% of that 1.7 to establish our endowment. If anybody of you wants to volunteer, Gail volunteered already to
And
teach
you said
me.
you weren't a trained fundraiser. So we only have a few minutes left, and this is a little bit of a self-serving question. Like, we're a fundraising professional organization. And how might you advise that secular organizations could tap into the philanthropic impulses that are such a big part of your faith communities?
For me, I will be quick, because we don't see many of you, in our public square or private square in the American Muslim community. I think it's very important, for a professional organization to be ahead, as a think tank, as a research, as a staff or professional development, is to understand, how faith is giving, because one day you'll be tapping into these resources, of devout Jewish or Christian or Muslims or Hindu or Buddhist. And I think this is an important panel, and I think, Patricia, you are ahead of your time, or whoever designed this, they are ahead of time. And I'm personally, and I'm sure my colleagues here are very thankful to have such an opportunity. Think outside the box. Outside the box is faith, and spirituality. And I think the more you get acquainted with understanding, the better you become, holistic in your approach, holistic and holy as well in your approach for fundraising. I feel today like a lifeguard sitting on this chair, I always wanted to be in this kind of chairs, Thanks.
So I think as fundraisers, we all know that fundamental to that gift is building a relationship with our donor. Within the Catholic faith, we believe that everything we have comes from God. So when we are working with people about and building that relationship, whether it's the monastery, your church, the local pool, the food bank, in recognizing that this person understands how much they grasp that God has given these gifts to them, it makes sense to share them back with their community. And as you had said, if we treat everyone with love, and if we treat everyone with respect, then every Catholic, every Christian, whether they're Muslim or Jewish, knows that we're responsible for that person. Loving the next person is taking care of the next person and doing what is necessary to take care of them. Whether it's volunteering, whether it's a gift, whatever. And so I think that's fundamental to any of our relationships and developing that support for whatever organization you have. But you guys all know that because you're professional fundraisers.
I'd also like to add my thanks to Patricia. This has been a wonderful experience, and I know I've learned a lot today, I can say. I'd say from Judaism, I'll just go back to the tenet of tikkun olam and working to repair the world. And I think even more now with younger generations that we all, want to work with and tap into. I think everyone is so much more involved in wanting to see their philanthropic dollars make an impact and really make a difference. And I think that just sort of focusing on that we're all in this together kind of mentality that, you know, as I mentioned before, not one person is not going to solve all the world's problems. And I'm just going to defer to a rabbi for my final words. Pirkei Avot is the words of the fathers, and this is from Rabbi Tarfon, and he said, "It is not your responsibility to finish the work of perfecting the world, but you are not free to desist from it either." So I think that, you know, it takes a village, and I think that if we all just sort of, as Susan said, recognize the relationships that we have with our donors, understand what they're passionate about, and help them make a difference in the world.
Thank you. Thank you all. That's a lovely message to end the year with. And thank you to Rose City Philanthropy for helping us bring the message beyond this room. And as a small token, enjoy the end of your year.